I'm representative of Breatheasy Augusta, and we're here today talking about all the issues and details surrounding the proposed smoke-free ordinance, as you know. The title of our presentation today is Everyone Deserves, or Everyone Has the Right to Breathe Clean Indoor Air. And I wanted to focus on just those three words, clean indoor air. That's really what we're talking about today, just protecting the rights of workers and the rest of us to having clean indoor air. So we just talked about the proposed ordinance and what it includes. We just wanted to briefly review that as well. Again, all workplaces and public buildings will be smoke and vape free. Moving it 10 feet away from doors and windows of those workplaces and public buildings. And I do want to point out that the model ordinance actually has that number at 25 feet. So that's a modification that was done just for the city of Augusta. So what the proposed ordinance does not do, it does not include outdoor events or venues, does not include vehicles, and again, like we mentioned, it does not include those existing vape and hookah shops. When you look at the potential impact of an ordinance like this, it's helpful to look at other cities where it's happened. And we always go back to Savannah because they enacted theirs in 2011. So they've had a good number of years of research and just activity surrounding the ordinance and how it's impacted the city. So studies by the Georgia Department of Public Health have found absolutely no impact on taxable sales revenues after adjusting for different parameters. So I think that's huge. I mean, they're a city very much like us, maybe even more dependent than us on tourism and people frequenting bars and restaurants in those workplaces. They haven't seen any impact on taxable sales revenue. There's also been a huge health impact. Just after 1 year, a 94% decrease in indoor air pollution. Again, just a huge benefit for workers and visitors who go to those places. And I love this quote from the owner of Bay Street Blues, which is a bar in Savannah. This was published in the Savannah Morning News in an article last year. This particular bar fought tooth and nail against the ordinance at the time. She argued against it, they showed up to all the meetings, they were 100% against it. It happened, and now, 7 years later, this was a quote that she had. All these years and not one person has objected. It's been a total win-win. I would never want to go back to indoor smoking. We've been talking a lot about secondhand smoke and its impact on health, so we wanted to point this out as well. The U.S. Surgeon General said this more than 20 years ago. There's no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. So that's why we're focusing on that fact of clean indoor air, because of what the Surgeon General said more than 20 years ago. So back to that sales question. So if you do a Google search, you'll actually find that there's study after study showing that there's no impact or positive impact on sales. The American Lung Association has said that no objective peer-reviewed study has ever found a significant negative economic impact, and often there's been a positive impact. The National Bureau of Economic Research did a survey of 28,000 establishments across Texas, and again, found no adverse effect. The CDC has done multiple studies, and here's just a few of the states that they've done studies in. And over again, there's been no impact. We've also talked at the committee meeting and also with the paper about the study in Columbia, Missouri. And just to refresh everyone's memory, there was one study that was released by Michael Packo that just found an adverse effect in one city, in Columbia, Missouri. We actually received an email from the co-author of a study that was a follow-up to Mr. Packo's study. And he mentions that Mr. Packo's study is actually not peer-reviewed. It means that other scientists didn't have a chance to look over the data. So they actually sent out his report to 3 health economists to see what their response was. And they found several holes in his thinking and in the study. So the study that this co-author presents actually reviewed work in 11 Missouri cities and found, again, no adverse economic impact. We also talk a lot about employment. I know it's been mentioned that probably a large number of employees in some of these workplaces probably are smokers. So you may be concerned about losing employees because of a smoke-free ordinance. But again, long-term research studies have found no impact or positive impact on employment. So Nicotine and Tobacco Research, they published a study that looked over 2 decades. and again found no impact. BMJ, which is the nation's oldest medical journal, they actually did a report looking at different workplaces dependent on employer size. And so whether an employee was large or small, they again found no impact on employment. Another benefit that people may not be aware of and may not have thought about is just the savings in terms of cleaning costs. A survey of 2,000 workplaces found that almost a quarter of those workplaces reported a reduction in maintenance costs after a smoke-free air ordinance was passed. The CDC published an EPA analysis that actually found that if we enacted a smoking ordinance across the U.S., we would actually save up to $8 billion just in a single year if we had smoke-free air laws.
Hi, my name is Clint Martin. I'm representing the CSR Food and Beverage Association. The Surgeon General report that she spoke about in 1986 reviewed 13 different studies. 7 of those reports linked no secondhand smoke caused cancer. That still, they conclusively came back and said that secondhand smoke caused cancer. By 1993, 33 studies were conducted on secondhand smoke. More than 80% of those studies found no association between secondhand smoke and lung cancer. 80% of the 33 studies. In '94, a congressional inquiry into the EPA's methods found that the agency had staff problems with the scientific advisory panel, and that there was conflict of interest in their findings. The EPA, by this method and others that we'll look at, had concluded that the environmental smoke was a Class A carcinogen. It's not. When it got to court, Judge Olstein, who is an anti-tobacco judge, called the EPA report an outright fraud, and overturned the conclusion of the report. The Congressional Research Service, after analyzing the EPA report, also concluded the statistical evidence does not appear to support the conclusion that there is substantial health effects from passive smoking. Also, the U.S. Department of Energy report found that there were serious and telling flaws in the EPA's methodology. They used fake science. They actually manipulated the data. Anybody that knows anything about statistics or any kind of scientific information, you can oversample anything you would like. By '98, whenever the ruling was passed down, everybody had already known that secondhand smoke was this great killer, because you've been told that for 5 years. The media is telling you that, everybody's telling you that the science doesn't back it up. Whenever the decision came down, everybody had already passed laws. There were laws on the books. They weren't going to reverse this. They weren't going to say, oh yeah, guys, we were wrong. They weren't going to do it. Another little publicized study that they did was from the World Health Organization, the IARC. They found in research that ran for 10 years and covered 7 European countries that secondhand smoke does not cause lung cancer. That's 7 countries in Europe that deny that it causes any kind of lung cancer. But yet we still have people here today that say, yes, we have to protect the children, we have to protect the people from the evils of secondhand smoke. Another study came out in 2003 from the American Cancer Society, or the American Society for Cancer Prevention, and it, again, said that there was no correlation between secondhand smoke and cancer. Another study in 2010, no significant statistical significance in heart attacks in any age group. The conclusion of that study in 2010 was very blunt. They said, we find no evidence that U.S. legislative smoking bans were associated with short-term reductions in hospital admissions for acute myocardial infarction, which is heart attacks, in elderly, children, or working age adults. Not good. 2012 study. 6 American states had to institute smoking bans had come up with a similar conclusion. Same with the 2014 study, which was authored by the same people that did the Pueblo and Greenleaf studies that said that they experienced a reduction in heart attacks. Those same people came and said whenever there's a statewide ban in Colorado that